Well, good morning, everyone. I tell you what, Glenn Daniels here, and we're going to have an expert in cybersecurity and network infrastructure today. Nick Espinoza has consulted with clients ranging from small businesses up to the Fortune 100 level for decades. Nick founded Wendy City Networks in 1998 at the tender age of 19. Man, that's not so tender. And this company was acquired in 2013. Now, in 2015, Security Fanatics, a cyber warfare outfit dedicated to designing custom cyber defense strategies for medium to enterprise corporations, was launched. An internationally recognized speaker, member of the Forbes Technology Council, TEDx speaker, strategic advisor to Human ID, a regular columnist for Forbes, award-winning co-author for a best-selling book, Easy Prey, host of The Deep Dive, a nationally syndicated radio show. He's on the board of advisors for Roosevelt University College of Arts and Science, as well as their Center for Cyber and Information Security, and is the official spokesperson for the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition. Nick is known as an industry thought leader and sought after for his advice on the future of technology and how it will impact everyday businesses and consumers. Hang on, we've got a great show coming up for you today.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, once again, welcome everybody. Nick, thank you very much for joining me. As we read through your intro, we realized how super busy you are. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's going to be educational beyond belief while we pull apart your TED Talk. Now, traditionally, Nick, I start off with just one question. And that question, sometimes people don't like to really hear about it too much, but a lot of people love this. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Now, you've done 4 TED Talks, so this makes it kind of interesting, but your journey from the time you conceived the TED Talk until the time that you delivered it. And let's talk about that very first one you did. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so it was interesting. For most of my career, was not actually in the public sphere. I've always been an extrovert, and I've always been a nerd, and that's kind of a rare thing to have a combination of both. And my business partner basically said, "Hey, why don't you try speaking? Why don't you try just getting out there and sharing your knowledge, just what you do every day?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Like, why not?" So I started down the speaking road and all that kind of stuff. I got actually a radio show here on a local station here in the Chicagoland area. And I've always loved TED Talks. I've always just, found them fascinating. They're great to listen to or watch. And I said, you know what? I've got a lot of different thoughts and ideas and all of that. I should codify one of these. And because I'm in cybersecurity, one of those core concepts that we have essentially to break down what a hacker is that we simply lie to you. No matter, what that situation is, we lie to you. And so by virtue of that, as I'm looking at technology, what I can't do is trust the security that I've got. I can't trust that the technology is going to be safe for me. And so here we are, trust sucks. And it was originally actually the title of one of my presentations, which was fully titled Trust Sucks, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Paranoia. And that's essentially what I did. I just basically made that into the talk, and obviously went and interviewed for TEDx, all that kind of stuff. And from there, it was just, here we are. That was number 1.
Was it difficult to get speaking or get people to take that subject matter? And was Trust Sucks the very first one that you did?
Yeah, in terms of TED Talks, TEDx Talks,
Yeah.
yes, that was my very first one. I think the world has a need for this. We are living obviously in the big tech era. Everybody's adopting technology from young to incredibly old and incredibly young. And so this is a subject that I feel like has been the redheaded stepchild in the room, for quite some time. And I like to say that I've been the redheaded stepchild in the room until the last 5 years or so, because now as we see basically cybersecurity become more prevalent in the news, you think of the 2016, Russian interference news, all that kind of stuff. I don't care what you believe politically, this was news. And by virtue of that, it kind of came to the forefront. People were realizing they're being data mined. People were realizing that hacking essentially was an inevitable event in the world, and hopefully it wouldn't happen to them. And so by virtue of that, it's been a good combination of basically me being an extrovert and a cybersecurity expert being able to talk on these. I wouldn't be here probably if that wasn't the case,
Well, just I want to get into Trust Sucks a little bit, but I just want to ask you, was it difficult for you to come up with that title and for that title to be accepted?
No, actually, so the event I did was TEDx Northbrook, which is here in the Chicagoland area. And I was one of about 200 or 300 applicants that they had, and I was one of 4 speakers that they selected. And so I walked in basically understanding that, okay, I'm going to build this. And my very first draft of this, it sounded like I was giving a speech to an accounting firm, meaning slide after slide of points. I'm thinking to myself, no, wait a second. I've never seen a TED Talk where you are just busy with slides. It's conceptual. It's talking essentially, in the ether of consciousness, if you will. And so that's my second draft, is actually the one that I pitched to the committee that was vetting me and interviewing me for this. And they loved it. They said this was great. And they told me it came down to me and another person speaking in technology, but mine was the one that was more TED-ish, if you will, so there you go.
Well, now, Trust Sucks is a good title. I love that. But what I think I loved more than that was your subtitle. Tell us about the one-word subtitle you had there.
Trust Sucks, and the one-word subtitle?
Yes.
I am not. I'll be honest. I'm not. This is like 4 years ago. I'm not remembering the subtitle. What was the subtitle I had?
Oftentimes, I believe, or something along those lines. Now that I'm thinking about it, I just listened to it an hour ago. Conditionally. Trust sucks conditionally.
Conditionally, right. I mean, and so one of my premise that I talk about in that is that we need trust in our lives. We cannot have a society without trust. And when you see a breakdown of trust in society, you really cease to have a society. In the same way that you should be able to trust your spouse, and he or she should be able to trust you. You should be able to trust your kids, and vice versa. We need trust. I trust my mechanic's going to fix my car and not rip me off. But when it comes to the technological infrastructure around us, we have to have a layer of distrust basically filter that, because the person that's connecting to us on Facebook may not actually be that long lost friend, or Prince Ubuntu in Nigeria may actually not exist, and he doesn't need help with his revolution and he's going to give you money for it, which is a very common one. So yeah, trust sucks when it comes to technology.
And one thing that I liked how you pulled it apart, and I would like for you to pull it apart for our audience today. There's 2 major components. You said making up trust. Can you pull that apart for us, and let's talk about those a little bit?
Yes. So there's 2 core sides to trust, and it's actually reinforced by a third, which I'll get to. But we have 2 types of trust. We have cognitive trust, and we have affective trust. And one of the things that I like to mention, I mentioned in that talk, and I also mentioned it on stage, is assume for a moment we're walking into a coffee shop, and we've been to this coffee shop 99 times in our lives. It's our local coffee shop. Our cognitive trust is our logic. It's based on our experience that we've had interacting with that coffee shop. So when we walk in, we know we've had 99 successful visits to that coffee shop. Our credit card's never been ripped off. We've never had a problem with the wireless. It's always been there. And so when we walk in on that 100th time, our cognitive trust, our logic says, I've had 0 problems. Therefore, it's safe to connect to the wireless. It's safe to use my credit card, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the flip side to that is affective trust. That is our emotional tie, our nostalgia, our understanding of the feeling that we have when we walk in. You walk in and it's your favorite barista, and you walk in, Norm, and there's your favorite chair in the corner, and they're going to make your coffee just right. You get a sense of safety, a sense of security. Therefore, the wireless, by extension, is going to be safe. And this is all reinforced by object permanence, which is something that we develop in our infancy. We're not born with it, but essentially we know as adults, unlike babies, that if we have a ball in front of us and that ball gets, let's say, moved behind us and we can't see it, the ball continues to exist. It's still there. Whereas babies, as soon as it's out of their basically eyesight, it's gone. It's in the ether. It doesn't exist anymore until they start to develop that cognitive ability. And so when we're walking into a place, what we are going to exploit, let's say as a malicious hacker, is the trust that you have in that place based on your logic and of experience, based on your familiarity with that. And essentially, you know that coffee shop's going to exist when you walk out the door every morning, and there's your object permanence. So that's essentially what we're talking about here.
So what happens? I mean, why can't? Okay, so I have cognitive trust for the place. I have effective trust for the place.
Mm-hmm.
How are hackers operating in that? I mean,
so
obviously I've been there 99 times and it's been fine.
Sure. So if I'm in the coffee shop, for example, and I'm malicious, I can run what is called an evil twin attack. I can create a fake wireless access point that looks exactly like the wireless in the coffee shop, but due to proximity, I will sit right by the door. As soon as you walk in and your phone or whatever connects to the wireless, you're connecting to me. Now you're in my ecosystem. I'm letting you out to the internet. You can still see things, but as your data is passing through my infrastructure, my laptop, my wireless, I can capture that data. You're also exposing part of your device by having it on a network that you don't know. Meaning I can now attack it. I can probe your device to see if I can insert an infection into it. And when you walk out of that coffee shop, you might be walking out with an infected phone. Then you might go back into your office, turn on the Wi-Fi there, possibly infect your office, infect your home. Or maybe I'm just going to get information off of your phone. But this is essentially what we're doing. We're banking on you trusting the environment that you're in. And by virtue of that, we are simply exploiting trust. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all we do.
I guess I'm a little bit concerned about that, because what you're saying, for example, if someone sets this evil twin up, they can see what's passing through to the internet. But isn't most of that banking information, all that stuff, encrypted, or is it not encrypted when it first goes out?
So yes and no. And I will tell you why. So let's use the example of a bank. When you connect to the bank, you see the website, you see that little green lock that you have on the bank on your web browser, so you know it's secure. That is what is known as SSL or TLS encryption. Mm-hmm. But because you are passing through my infrastructure, I can run what is known as an MITM, or man in the middle attack, which basically means your data stops here. I decrypt your data, I capture your data, I re-encrypt your data, and then I send it along to the bank. And when the bank sends you information back, I decrypt what the bank says, I capture it, I re-encrypt, and I send it to you. So your phone sees you as secure, the bank sees you as secure, but because you're going through my infrastructure, I have the ability to basically decrypt, analyze, and re-encrypt that data. Enterprise level firewalls, for example, at like large corporations do this for security, because a lot of phishing sites actually use that little green lock. They use SSL and TLS encryption, something like 93% or something like that of all phishing sites. And so if the firewall can't see the traffic moving back and forth through it in and out of your office, then it can't defend it. So you could be downloading an infection through an encrypted tunnel, and if the firewall can't inspect that tunnel, then it's going right through your firewall. So that's obviously a huge problem. But yes, that's why we never use, and we recommend never using, public infrastructure, public wireless networks you don't know, because you never know who's going to be on it,
Well, okay, so that's a good recommendation. If you're sitting down with the CEO of one of your Fortune 100 companies and you said to them, okay, you want to stop a certain percentage of this, teach your employees blank.
Yes. So every organization, I don't care. It doesn't have to be Fortune 100. You could be 3 people in an organization. Everybody should go through cybersecurity awareness training. Every organization should do things like phish their employees. And it's not a slap you down, gotcha moment. It's a teaching collaborative. We're all in this together. Nobody wants to get this corporation ripped off, by simply making a mistake by talking to the wrong person or clicking the wrong link. And so training is one of those things. And when I'm talking about cyber defense strategies, the 2 core things I talk about before I actually get to like the antivirus and the firewalls and all those kinds of things, which is data security, I talk about 1, awareness and training. Because I like to say I can build you a Ferrari's worth of a defense, but if we're turning the keys of the Ferrari over to a chimpanzee, how far are we going to get? Right? We have to learn how to drive. And so that is one of those core things, awareness training. And the second one is asset management. If you cannot identify all of your technological assets, then how do you know they're being updated? How do you know they're secure? How do you know half of them haven't been stolen by your employees or simply by somebody walking into your building? Those are two critical things that are table stakes for cybersecurity. And the whole thing basically is buttressed, if I'm talking to a large CEO, by the risk to the organization. How does the organization quantify risk against their growth strategy? How much risk are they willing to take? Can you be down for 6 hours and it's economically so unviable for the company, or can marketing be down for a week and nobody cares? If you can't answer these questions as a corporation, then how do you know your contingency plans, your backups, all of that stuff can speak to the actual risk you have in hard and soft dollars?
Wow, that must take a lot of time because I'm sitting there trying to, as you're asking those questions, I'm thinking about my small company. I mean, how long could I be down without the marketing arm?
Right.
How long? And so then what's my backup plan going to be?
What about your computers? I mean, imagine not being able to email, not being able to send out a message, not being able to send out an invoice, receive money. How long can you go, until that's just unviable? Or people are thinking, Glenn's not getting back to me. Screw that guy. He must not care, and move on, right? Not to mention the fact you're going to have to tell everybody at some point, yeah, I got your data breached, and how many of them are going to want to stick around with you?
Yes, that's you look at some of these companies that had that happen to them. One thing, I have another question, but you tripped off a question in my mind. If I'm inside of a coffee shop or a public Wi-Fi, do VPNs really offer protection?
Yes and no. So here's the thing. You can go watch, there's a commercial, I won't mention the brand, where they're like, well, I can sit in a coffee shop all day because I've got this VPN, and that is half the battle. And the reason being is that what a VPN does is, as you're sending data from, let's say, your phone or your laptop out to the internet, you're actually wrapping it an extra layer of encryption. So above and beyond, let's say, that green lock that you've got, when you're going to your bank or wherever, you're actually doing a second layer. So if I'm running a man-in-the-middle attack, meaning your data is passing through my stuff and I'm capturing it, all I'm doing is capturing encrypted data that I'm not going to bother trying to crack. But because you are sharing a wireless infrastructure with other people in the coffee shop, whoever's connecting to it, your device is still on that network. Meaning, if I'm able to probe and attack your device because we're on the same network, so our two devices can communicate, if I'm able to get an infection, let's say, onto your phone where I can capture information, then your VPN is useless to me because I'm getting it before it's even being sent. Or when you're receiving it, I'm seeing it even though you have an encrypted pipe. So a VPN is not a firewall. It's half the battle. For that, I recommend everybody get a VPN in their life, whether it's corporate or personal, and pay for it, because there's a lot of horrible free ones out there that are run by like intelligence operations, which we just recently learned, or they're data mining you, like Facebook's VPN, which got pulled from the Apple Store for doing exactly that, violating privacy. So make sure you're getting a good one. But yeah, that's half the battle. And I always have a VPN on, but I never connect to public Wi-Fi. We're surrounded by cellular connections. You pick your company, right? AT&T, Verizon, whoever, they're out there, and it's much more safe just to stay on there. You can stream Netflix through it all day, which means you can easily answer email or check social media, here on LinkedIn, whatever you're doing, using your 4G or now 5G connection, and you never need to connect to Wi-Fi really, except if you're incredibly remote.
Okay, so that though brings up a question that you talked about inside of the your TED talk, and that is ISPs. You let us kind of know, well, ISPs are a mess, or can be a mess.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so essentially, when you sign up for, and take your pick, I don't care who it is, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, et cetera, to get internet connection in your home, they're going to basically ship you a modem. They're going to ship you a device that essentially you plug in, and the device is designed to be as easy as humanly possible for non-technical people to plug in and get running and just get onto the internet. The problem that we have is that the manufacturers of these devices oftentimes don't have good software development for security, meaning they're not patching these things, they're not updating these things until a massive amount of patches were out there. And when I did that talk, that was on the heels of learning that there was something like 70 odd known vulnerabilities in the modems that Comcast, AT&T, and I think it was Time Warner were all sending out from this one manufacturer, which basically means I could teach a third grade class how to break into this thing. So that's obviously a very huge thing. So you cannot rely on basically your internet service provider for security. You really need to go and get more secure products yourself. And they make them for residential customers as well as business. I'm not expecting any, person in their house to spend what a corporation would for, let's say, an enterprise level firewall, but they definitely make firewalls that detect threat that are affordable for the house, and everybody should be running those because it's one of the safest things you can do.
I'm going to ask a question that you may not want to answer, but it's okay. Answer it anyway. Windows 11 and 10, they have a firewall built in. Is that good enough?
No. And the reason being, I'm not shy.
Okay.
I'm not shy at all. No, I mean, Windows Firewall, it's a good attempt. Windows Firewall has been around since the Windows 2000s era or so, but the problem is that it's what you're looking at is something that essentially has to defend itself. Ideally, in a network, what you want the ability to stop the threat before it actually touches your device. So if I'm sitting in my house and I've got, let's say, a firewall that detects threat, let's say I go to that site, I accidentally type in google.com as opposed to google.com, and it takes me to a malicious site where it tries to download an infection. Ideally, my firewall will see that and stop it before it gets to my device, my computer. And a good cyber strategy for business or for home is to stop the threat before it gets into your network. If your computer has to defend yourself, you're doing it wrong. Yes, antivirus, endpoint detection response, all that kind of stuff is your backup to good infrastructure defense. Meaning, if I'm sitting here with AT&T in my house, I better be stopping it right at the door, not letting it in, and making sure and having my computers defend themselves.
I see. Okay, that makes great sense. Now, when we talked earlier about the two major components, or then you added a third one on there, I kind of got a little bit lost, and also a little bit lost during your TEDx. So I'm going to ask you to dive into that just a little bit.
Sure.
The effective trust. What is that?
So effective trust is the nostalgia that you have. Another one of the examples that I use, it's your emotional tie to something that allows you to extend trust. Another one of the examples that I use in that talk is I can make myself, for example, if I'm trying to fish you, I can find you on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I'm going to see your work history. I'm probably going to see your education history. I can go to classmates.com. I can find all of these things out about people simply because we put it out there. We have a need to share. And so by virtue of that, let's say, and I don't know where you went to university, but an easy one. Let's say you went to Harvard. Okay. Everybody knows Harvard. So you went to Harvard. I can see, okay, your Harvard class of whatever you are. Now I know what you're into. Now I know what you've majored in. Now I know where you went and what your class is. I'm going to make myself look like somebody from that class. I can go and figure out who the class list is. Thank you, classmates.com, et cetera, and then basically create a profile of somebody that was in your class in, let's say you studied business at Harvard, okay? I can be in that class. I can even look up old teacher rosters thanks to archive searches and all that kind of stuff. And so I can be like, oh yes, I was also Harvard class of XYZ. Do you remember that professor blah, blah, blah that taught this? Oh my God, what a jerk. I hated him. Did you like him? And now you're like, okay, I have checked off so many boxes. Oh my God, he's in my class. He remembers that professor. He's obviously went to Harvard, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're extending trust into me. You're accepting me whether you realize it or not. And so by virtue of that, let's say I connect to you on social media. Let's say you have a Facebook account and I know that you're into, I don't know, baseball. Okay, I can go and say, hey, I know you're a big, Cubs fan. Here are 2 tickets to the Cubs that I just can't use. That, I know you're a huge baseball fan. I see you post about it all the time. Why don't you go have fun? Here they are. And I send you a PDF that's infected. Here we are. This is how we break into companies. This is how we break into organizations. One of those tactics that we use is essentially banking on that effective trust. If I'm going to be breaking into a large corporation because they're paying me to do this, I will literally show up early to these meetings every time just to chat up the executive assistant to the CIO or whoever I'm meeting with. So he or she gets a feeling, oh yes, I'm going to be the new security officer here. Like, it's good to meet you. Like, oh yeah, I come from this. And I'm totally talking people up. And so when they sign the contract and I walk out of that 3rd or 4th meeting, one of the first things I do is say, hey, hey, can I sit down in front of your computer real quick? We need to check something for security. And they will automatically stand up and they will automatically let me in. And these are things that we are banking on. It's the emotional connection we have to others. It's that camaraderie that we feel. And in the case of the coffee shop, it feels good to walk in and everybody says, Norm, everybody knows you, right? Every time Norm walked into Cheers, that's a comfortable feeling. The barista, he or she is going to make your drink exactly the same way because you have a weird drink and that's how she does it. These are things that we just take for granted in our everyday life, but it's essentially who we are. That's what I'm going to exploit. Yeah.
Curious. Okay. That is kind of scary because we all want to connect with somebody.
Yes. We all have that need. Essentially, what we are doing is placating and placating and exacerbating your need for this by making us somebody that has camaraderie with you. I mean, think about it from the political spectrum. It's so easy to basically fish people if you make yourself to be very, very liberal or very, very conservative and target those people. Because you're speaking their language, they think you're part of their tribe, whatever that is, and now by virtue of that, you can disseminate information, you can disseminate infections, all those kinds of things. It's pervasive in society. It's just who we are. I have it, we all have it. My whole point is when I'm looking at getting that cell phone or getting that laptop or connecting my phone to a rental car via Bluetooth, we don't stop and think about, oh my God, I'm dumping all of my contacts into a rental car. And somebody like me, when I rent a car, can come and extract all of the contacts, all of the phone information from every past connection in that vehicle.
See, now that's something I didn't consider. And now that we're starting to travel again, I used to do that a lot.
All the time. Everybody does. And they're so easy to hit. It's so easy to hit.
And even if you delete it at the end, it's still there someplace?
So it depends on the maker. The manufacturers, thanks to Tesla, actually are starting to really wake up and realize this. But I mean, think about it this way: most car manufacturers, once it leaves the showroom floor, they never have updates for the technology in the vehicle. I drove a luxury car. It was a 2010. I had it for like 4 or 5 years, and I would walk into the dealership every year or every oil change or whatever and say, "Hey, do you have an update for my radio? Do you have an update for my head unit, my Bluetooth?" And their answer was like, well, no. I mean, this is the car's the car. And I broke into my own vehicle. I literally broke into my own vehicle. I mean, it's crazy. We do it with airlines as well. We can hit airline wireless when we're in flight. I mean, it's just, we don't think about these things. You're captive audience at that point.
You kind of are. So that's where you take your breaks.
Yeah.
No, you hit something that hit me, and I was very concerned when you said it. And then as you talked about it, so I want to talk about it here too.
Yeah.
Liars.
Yeah.
Your discussion there, and then, well, share that with us. How did you go? Yeah, just share with us, because that was kind of to the point, poignant, and then made me stop to really think.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, and that I actually mentioned that in my second TED Talk, at the end of the day, the only thing a criminal hacker is going to do to you is lie to you. I am paid by corporations essentially to show them where their vulnerabilities are. And that means oftentimes I have to social engineer. I have to lie to people to get them on my side. Meaning if I'm going after you, Glenn, for example, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to research you. I'm going to figure out that, oh, you did go to Harvard class or whatever, et cetera. That's what we do. And if we really have a desire or need to break into you, that's perfectly fine. Now, a lot of these are very basic. You get those emails that are like, oh, IT says, please, change your password, click here. A lot of those things are easy to spot. But at the end of the day, the only thing we're trying to do is fool you. Conversely, you are extending trust into the products that you buy. Let's say you buy a router for your house, or you buy an Apple phone or a Samsung, or take your pick. You are you're extending a trust relationship into that manufacturer that they're going to keep that phone up to date. They're going to keep it secure. When vulnerabilities are found, they're going to turn patches and updates around for those vulnerabilities quickly. When you walk into a big box retail store or your local home fix-it store kind of thing, you're extending trust every time you give them your credit card. You are trusting that they are going to handle your credit card information securely. And we've seen the opposite, where people get lax or things are missed, and then we have 80 million credit cards get hit, like in the case of Home Depot. Same with Target, same with a whole bunch of others. They learn from those mistakes, they move on. What we are fighting against in cybersecurity always is complacency. It is our biggest problem that we have, is that humans get complacent, organizations get complacent, IT departments get complacent, and it's something that we in cybersecurity simply just cannot afford to do, because that's when we drop the ball. That's when we get everybody hit.
Wow. Okay. I want to push that a little bit more, because you said in your talk, you said that and I forget the research you quoted, but it says something along the lines of that we lie on average twice a day.
Yes.
And us lying to ourselves also helps people destroy our security.
Yes. Well, and I think, and that for the record is a study done by Psychology Today. That's where that came from. Just for the record, I did not make that up. You can go Google that. Understand, though, that lying to yourself, depending on the circumstance, isn't necessarily a bad thing. So if you read somebody like Malcolm Gladwell, for example, he talks about, because he used to run track when he was living, I think it was in Jamaica, one of the Caribbean islands, I think it was Jamaica, where you basically, if you know that you're in the lane next to Usain Bolt, you have to convince yourself that you're going to beat the fastest man on the world. You know what I mean? You have to lie to yourself. Whether it's true or not, you are psyching yourself up. There are positives to essentially lying, but lying to yourself in other ways basically means that you're susceptible to the reception of a lie from somewhere else. Meaning, if it seems right to you and somebody is reinforcing that, there's another thing. So, for example, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and understand, for the record, and let me preface this with this: there's misinformation and there's disinformation, and disinformation turns into misinformation very quickly. Disinformation is an actual attempt, a knowing attempt to deceive, to put out information that is going to sway people or a population against one thing or the other. Misinformation are those people that see this. Basically, it confirms their bias, it's confirmation bias, and then they put it out thinking it's legitimate and it's urgent in some way, shape, or form. And that is essentially, if we're talking about lying, people are unknowingly lying when they are putting out misinformation, and here we are. And that's how things essentially go viral, if you will, in the misinformation, disinformation world. And again, I'm not talking, it doesn't have to be politics or COVID or anything like that. This is as old as time. Misinformation, disinformation is as old as society itself. And so these are things that we have to look for. So that ties into lying, in the sense that if we are lying to ourselves, meaning we are putting our heads in the sand to ignore problems, meaning we're not going to research that misinformation, or I'm just automatically assuming everything around me is completely fine and safe and all good, we're doing ourselves a disservice. It's not the same as me saying I'm the best in the world because I can beat Usain Bolt. Maybe if I dropped 800 pounds and practiced,
I started over at age 2 running.
Right. I'd probably still be at the starting gate, but at least I'd have a better shot, But people will psych themselves up. I'm the best in the world no matter what, and they'll perform better. They will. It's proven.
Well, let me just kind of paraphrase that. So if I say something, let's say I decided, okay, I'm going to say, if you have a teddy bear in your house, that's bad. And I'm giving out, that's disinformation.
Sure.
But then if I send that out to 100 people and 30 of those people recirculate that and say, hey, there's a study found that Glenn discovered that teddy bears in your house is bad karma or bad whatever.
Right.
When they do it, that's misinformation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Essentially, they are taking you as an authoritative source. Like, I am Glenn Daniels, teddy bear researcher extraordinaire. And my conclusion is this. And you could just be completely making it up. But you know what? You get those 3 people that have, some latent fear of teddy bears or fear of stuffed animals. And they're like, oh my God, he's right. He's absolutely right. I have to tell the world about this. Now I have proof. And that's essentially what it is. And we see it in a lot of different things. And not to, again, get political, but you can look at COVID misinformation. There are actual chiropractors out there giving virology information, and they have 0 training in virology. And again, I don't care what you think about COVID or, any of that. You shouldn't be taking advice from a chiropractor. I don't care what your belief is, unless it's on chiropractic things. In the same way that you would never ask me how to build a car. If you want it to work, that's fine. I would never, ever do that because I don't know how to build a car or install your HVAC or plumbing if you don't want to get flooded out or have your house burned down. We all have specialties. We should stay in our lanes, I think, in that sense. There are experts out there that spend a lifetime learning, researching, whatever that field is. Mine happens to be cybersecurity.
Okay. I like that a lot. I want to ask you, though, you did 4 of these, and obviously they've had some impact. How did doing TED Talks impact your career or your organization? In fact, you know, because sometimes, like my TED Talk, I would say did blah, 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 blah. How did your TED Talk affect your career or your organization? Your TED
Uh,
Talks?
well, honestly, I would say, especially my second one, really gave me a lot of recognition. That one had actually started being used in college curriculums. I don't want to say it went viral, but it's got a lot of views. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Trinity Challenge is using it as part of their educational course. Like I was very proud of that, and I'm proud of all of them, but that one was, I think, by far and away like a runaway. My goal, for the record, when I created these, wasn't necessarily was to put information out there, but my goal with this was essentially to create, I want to say, a mark on the world, in the sense that, when I die, if anybody that's related to me looks back and says, well, what did great uncle Nick do, or something like that, there's tangible proof that I'm attempting to contribute to the greater knowledge of society in a way that I can. And you may disagree with some of the premises in my talk, but you can't say I didn't try.
Yeah. And that's so critical. My organization is 100% behind that. We believe that completely.
Yeah.
Make your impact.
Yeah,
your impact.
absolutely. And I saw that in your opening. Yeah, how are you going to change 1% or impact your day 1% or whatever that was? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you're never going from 0 to 60 in a second, right? It's obviously it's incremental change. It's like cybersecurity. Every little thing that you do to make yourself more secure makes you that much harder to hit. Everything you do to improve your life makes you that much more improved.
Well, and I look at the things, and I'll just share this thought with everyone. That is one of those solutions that, people don't like this term, but it could very well be considered a major $1 trillion solution. How much money is lost because somebody has hacked Microsoft system or Target system? How many people ended up losing their jobs behind Target's having to cut back because they got sued so much, or T-Mobile? Those type of solutions that you're presenting to say, hey, stay out of this, because people can try to steal from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's big time. So if you're in corporate, all I'm saying, that's big time money solution that you can't really put a dollar on, because you may charge $100,000, but if you protect them for $100 million, isn't that worth it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what a lot of people don't realize is that what we are witnessing without actually witnessing it is the single largest wealth transfer in history, and it's going on right now.
Yes.
And in 2017, we essentially had a prediction that by the end of 2021, as in 10 days from now, basically we collectively, you, me, our governments, businesses, everybody, will have spent about $1 trillion on cyber defense strategies. That's firewalls, antivirus, awareness training, all this kind of stuff, risk management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But by the end of 2021, the prediction in 2017 was that criminal hackers will have extracted over $6 trillion from us, basically in insurance payouts and ransoms and all of these kinds of things. It's even the, grandma in Idaho that has to pay $500, to unlock her computer kind of thing. All of this adds up to about $6 trillion. And now the estimate is, in the next 2 years or so, that $6 trillion is going to cap over $10 trillion. This is a huge problem. Cyber insurance, by virtue of this, is also having a reckoning because they've not been able to quantify risk at all, in any real effective way, and they're just getting their shirts handed to them at this point. The attackers are eating their lunch because the payouts are insane, and we've seen these rise and rise and rise, and that's in part because cyber insurance doesn't know how to quantify this or enforce policies, but also because of cryptocurrency, which makes it much harder to track these gangs for intelligence agencies and law enforcement as well. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. But yeah, to your point, I mean, we are living in a precarious time. And the only benefit, the only silver lining to that is organizations that are getting hit now, nobody wants to get hit, but it's mitigated in the sense of, well, we're now joining one of the million companies this year that got hit. It's not just us, it's everybody. You're no longer a unicorn. What the unicorn is the company that's been impervious to this, and it's either because they've been flying under the radar and haven't been hit yet, or they're so on the ball with cybersecurity because they've got an army of nerds like me that are doing this kind of stuff that, here we are. So it's crazy.
It's a major issue. I want to just conclude with my patented conclusion question, put you on the spot.
Sure.
What question should I have asked you that I did not ask you?
What question should you have asked me?
That I did not ask
You
you.
did not. That I did not. Well, I think the one that I would think of off the top of my head is how do people, or how should people get into cybersecurity? Or even why should people get into cybersecurity? I think if we're having a cybersecurity discussion, I think that's one of those things. And the reason why I say that is, according to the most recent report from the GAO and the government, we are almost 6 million cybersecurity seats short in the United States, meaning we can't hire. We're not training people fast enough. The government alone has almost 40,000 open cybersecurity positions, and they have problems hiring because they don't pay as well as private sector, and they also have zero tolerance on things like drugs. And basically, everybody under the age of 25 that we interview, we don't drug test for reasons anymore, you know. And so it's a different society. But if I'm talking about cybersecurity, usually that's something that I think is just important to ring the bell on. You know, and I like to say, if I'm on stage and I have, you know, somebody raises their hand and says, you know, oh, my kid is in college, should he or she go into cybersecurity? And my default answer is, you know, yes, we need the help. They're going to get a good paying job. And even if they suck at it, they're going to make enough money to get basically out of your basement, get their own place, you know, start living their life. Because quite frankly, we're hiring everybody that's got any kind of qualification at this point. It's a huge problem in my industry right now.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know, ladies and gentlemen. That's good to know. So now, what are you doing right now to help people? What are you doing right now to help?
What am I doing right now to help people? Outside of the talks, I just delivered my fourth one back in October. So I'm on the board of a charity here in Chicago called KEEN, Kids Enjoy Exercise Now. It helps disabled children, like mentally disabled children, with safe places to exercise and socialize and all of that, which is something that's sorely needed. It's 100% free to our athletes, so that's great. I very much enjoy that. I also try to move the ball forward on my radio show, just talking about very interesting things. You know, I recently got to interview Neil deGrasse Tyson and talk about, the future of science. If, we turn into an authoritarian regime, what happens then? And he had some very interesting answers. My last radio show was on intellectual humility. We are losing intellectual humility thanks to social media, and that is a huge concern for society overall. So there's a lot. I try to find interesting things that I think the world should know about, and I try to do it in my daily podcast, videos, and radio show.
Wow, excellent. So if I wanted to have you come in to do a talk to my organization, the email address is in the description. Is that how they would do it? The LinkedIn address.
LinkedIn, my LinkedIn connection. Yeah, connect to me on LinkedIn and all of that, and just let me know you saw me here with Glenn, and I think we could have a good conversation.
That's absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, we know by your credentials and what you've been doing that you're busy. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group Essential Leadership Skills and share your leadership knowledge with us all.